Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. And we told you we're going to keep sharing life experiences. I want to welcome Tracy Brinkmann. Did I say that right?
You said that right.
Okay. To Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast. We have another amazing testimony. Tracy, can you come up and tell us a little bit about yourself? And then, as you know, City Sid is going to kick off that first question.
All right, then. I am the humble host of another podcast out there called The Dark Horse Entrepreneur. And I like to focus on my parents out there because, parents often feel like they have to choose between family time or potentially building a business. And I try to make the Dark Horse Entrepreneur and the things I do to disprove that myth, right? Because I try to help those busy parents out there build a profitable online business using skills they already have, even if they only got, 15, 30 minutes a day so that they can run their race and get their results and just be who they are while still, being the loving mom or dad that they can be. So that's me in a nutshell. And obviously I've been through the ups and downs in life. I like to call life a wonderful roller coaster, and in it I've had 3 major downturning dips, and I'm happy to chat about any of those anywhere you'd like to.
Well, thank you again for being here with us. As we do, like to ask all of our guests, we like to start at the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up, your home structure, family structure, if you experience any traumas or hardships in your adolescent years.
I was lucky enough. My father was a 23-year veteran in the United States Army. And so I grew up all over the United States and even was lucky enough to spend 6 years of my youth over in Germany. And so I got to see a lot of different cultures and meet a lot of different people as we moved around. Of course, the Army is the blending of everyone that's already here in America. And so traumas, well, yeah, I've had some traumas. Obviously, we could say the traumas of having to move. And I never really felt that as a trauma until I got old enough to start making those emotional connections as a young man. So the last time my dad got stationed over in Germany, having to leave the friends I had made, I did have a sexual trauma of a gentleman next door. And so that was one that probably shaped me maybe subconsciously because it happened when I was pretty young. I was in double digits, so it wasn't too young, but still too young that it should have happened in the first place. And those were the big ones. I mean, I did have a girlfriend die in my arms right after my dad retired. And so that was probably early teens. So yeah, had a few bumps in the road, you could say.
You're muted.
Yep.
I apologize.
It's all good.
Yeah. So let's get into it. So are you comfortable with talking about the sexual trauma of your next door neighbor? Can you tell us a little bit about it and how he was able to violate you?
It was one of those trusted friends scenarios, unfortunately. Growing up, like I said, in the military, one of the things I leaned on very early on was being humorous and outgoing. It was part of my nature. And so whenever we'd get to a new station, and this one just happened to be, my dad was being stationed in San Pedro, California, and an older gentleman lived next door and had made friends with mom and dad. And over the course of the summer, it was not strange for me to go over and say, hey, I mean, to cut your yard, do the little chores for extra money for the ice cream man and the whole 9 yards. But then it came to the point where, well, yeah, if you would do this for me, I'd be happy to give you, a few extra dollars. Well, naive, silly, stupid, not consciously knowing that it was wrong. And the violation was a manual violation. So it was, asked to pleasure him via the hand. So that, yeah, what I do remember of it, it was just a friendly gentleman tapping into the naivete and, here's a few extra dollars for, candy, or, right down to the store or the ice cream man when he comes by.
Now, was this something that you, expressed to your family or told anybody about, just to step in, or, what happened?
It was, well, luckily my parents were awesome, right? I can't say well, I could probably say some negative things about my folks. We all can, right? But I had a pretty open relationship with my mother and father. I was actually adopted. So, and then they told me early on that I was adopted. So I always felt special because of the way they approached it. It was like, we chose you, we brought you in, we wanted you, and we fought for you kind of scenario. They were actually friends with my birth parents and saw I was being mistreated. I had 3 other older sisters, and my adopted mother used to babysit me, and she's like, well, we got to get him out of this. Anyway, so we had this really great relationship. And so when they asked me, where'd you get that extra money for this toy? And I forget what the toy was at the time. I don't know, it was probably like a, Steve Austin $6 million man doll or something like that. It was something I shouldn't have had enough money for, because they knew how much they were giving me for allowance. And so I told him, I said, Mr. Smith next door, he gave it to me. Well, what did he give it to you for? And I told them. And my dad about launched himself off his chair without using his hands or feet to do so. And my mom had to stop him before he got to the front door, because my dad was a 6'3", just cliche military man, looked like he should have been a linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams at the time. So he would have done damage, and it was his intention to do damage. And so rather than him going over and greeting the gentleman, they called the authorities and got them involved right away.
Good. I wish more parents were like your parents.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So what happened to him once they called the authority?
Well, he was arrested on site and taken away, and then I had to go through sitting in court. And at the time, it wasn't in a full courtroom. They put me in a separate room and had like a camera sitting there so that everyone could see, that I was talking to them, but I didn't have to, face him again, face to face, but he still got to face his accuser. And I, told the story. And it was interesting in the aspect that no one made me feel like it was my fault. And God love it. I think that's a lot of times how the youth that fall prey to this kind of thing, they get victimized because they get gaslit and being told that you're the reason this happened, male or female, right? I've heard it come at the girls. Well, the reason that happens is because you dress like, well, bullshit. I got 3 girls and you come at my ladies like that. I don't care how they're dressed. They say no, no means no. So I felt very blessed in the fact that no one, in my inner circle, my close family or external, ever made it feel like, well, it's your fault because you allowed this to happen. It was, was a young boy that, just kind of didn't know any better and fell victim.
Again, that is amazing of your parents, to go with your word and take the proper procedure to getting that handled. Now, at what point did you? Because it kind of, when you were telling the story, it kind of seems like when they asked you what he gave you the money for, and you just told them you maybe didn't have a connotation that anything was wrong. Just how nonchalantly you said it. At what point in the process, did you realize, what actually happened, or whether that was in the process or after? Did you realize what actually happened to you, and that he should be in trouble for it?
It was during the conversation that took place between the phone call to the authorities and about the time they arrived there. Mom and dad were sitting there sharing with me, well, here's why this is wrong. Here's why we're getting the police involved. Here's why your father is reacting the way he is right now, because it's not right for older boys and girls, older men and women to, approach children in this context, right? It's private parts, and you don't touch those things, and it's wrong. It was really a conversation that hadn't been had with me at that point. Like I said, I was probably in the early single digits, late single digits, or early doubles. I'm trying to remember the year. I know it was pre-76, so it would have been early 70s, late 60s. So it would have been right about the cusp between 10 and 11, right in that area right there. So I hadn't had that conversation. And I was just one of those guys that's like, whatever, I don't get it. But you once you get told, it's like, oh, okay, right? It almost seems odd because today in the world that, well, even the world I raised my girls in, by the time they hit the double digits, I made sure they were in the know. And it may have been because of that experience, subconsciously or consciously. But, having ladies almost to me feels a little different because there's a lot more predatory activities around the ladies, and that's my personal opinion. I'm sure there's lots about the boys too. Obviously, I fell victim to one of those, but it's having that chat, making sure that they know I don't care where you are, I don't care what the scenario is. You call, you tell, you come on over, and you have that potentially tough conversation because that's the love I feel for you. I'm here to protect you, and I can't do that if I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I want to go back, and then I'm going to jump back. You mentioned that you were adopted and that your birth parents abused you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
I didn't get a whole lot of the story, but the story bits I did get was the abuse was more of neglect, right? Not bathing, sitting in the diaper too long, which probably led to probably a little malnourished as well. So I had kind of an eczema as a youth. And so I would get these rashes that needed to be tended to, and they weren't being tended to, and they would get to the point where they would be cracking. These days, it's just plain old dry skin anymore, little dietary shifts and things. But yeah, so mom was, when she would babysit me, she would make sure I'd get fed and taken care of. And it came to the point where mom kept volunteering to babysit me even longer and even longer. Meanwhile, they were working to try and get me out of this scenario and then adopt me in the process. And I know my adopted mother, started babysitting me when I was like 5 or 6 months old. And the adoption was probably finalized when I was about 1 or 2, somewhere in that time frame.
In what ways, once it was all said and done, sentencing or court or whatever, went down, what would you say were the ways that it, affected you, or that I'll just say that it affected you?
I don't think I ever spent any time thinking about how it affected me consciously, but I'm sure it did, right? There's probably some points in time. Here's one. I joined the military right out of high school. And like I said, I grew up in the military, so it was an environment I was very comfortable with, met all ranges of race, creeds, colors, religions, and, belief system, whatever. So when I joined, I thought, oh, this is going to be a cakewalk. And I went through, did my AIT, and I was sitting in my first duty station over in Germany. And I went to a movie, and I was sitting down, and a gentleman sat down next to me, and I didn't pay attention to it. And about halfway through the movie, his hand moved over onto my leg. this is no joke. And I jumped up and I drew back like I was going to punch him in the mouth. And I just, gathered myself and I walked away. And so there's probably that kind of inner trigger that may have been from that experience. Or it could have just been, what the hell are you doing? Dude, seriously? And this wasn't even like some, seedy theater on the back streets of some town. This was on base, in a theater on base, which was like, wait a minute, families go here. So that was the only thing I could think, if I reflect on it right now, that I could think of a time where it may have been triggered by something that may have been, happened at that time.
Okay. Did he I was going to ask, did he serve your abuser, did he serve jail time?
I know he got jail time. I believe it was 7 years, as I remember it now. Whether he served it, I don't know. We moved away before that 7 years would have expired anyway.
And was it something, after, did either one of you have to move, or, what were kind of the stipulations to keep you protected from him?
He never came back to the condo that was next door to us, so I don't know what the stipulations were for that. I'm sure there was some sort of, you can't be within 100 yards of this person or this, his home or school, but I don't know about that. And the last time I saw him, like I said, was, in that courtroom. Actually, for me, it was out in the hallway, down the hall. I was in the little rooms, a little separated there with the camera. And then I never saw him again. And we lived there, gosh, another 2-ish years.
Good. I'm so glad just to hear life experience where parents did step in to protect their child, because you hear so many, especially back during that time, where parents didn't protect their kids, and a lot of families pushed it under the rug. So I'm happy to hear it was a good outcome. So I want to jump into next. What was the next event in your life?
I think the next big event from we're talking about from a traumatic standpoint.
Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay. Probably would have been after I got out of the service. I started a little programming company down in Southern California, and I had landed this big client. Was super excited about it. We're out celebrating this big win, and then I started chatting with the gentleman that owned the bar, who was a friend of mine, about, oh my gosh, I made all these promises and these tight timelines to land this client. How am I going to do that? And I was introduced to methamphetamines, and that started my probably 2-year, 3-year downhill slide into addiction, which got pretty brutal for a while. And it got to the point where I started having people sell product for me to support my habits and my lifestyle. And then it ended with the police kicking open the door to my condo.
Now, I do want to ask, was this before or after you did mention that somebody died in your arms? Was this before or after that?
That would have been after that. The person dying in my arms would have been a girlfriend of mine in my latter teen years, between that time frame. If you want to go there first, we can.
We can do that.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go there first, and then.
Sure, 100%. Yeah, I was like I mentioned earlier, my father retired, and we settled into Southern California. That was where my great grandma lived, there in Norwalk, California, and we bought a condo probably about 5 miles away from her, and we'd go over there and visit every Sunday. So anyway, I had met a young lady, Teresa, and it was love at first sight. Cue the wispy music and the songbirds at this moment. But for about, I don't know, about a year and a half, we dated, and it was over at her house, and she lived on a corner. And so there was a T section here, a big school field, and this was all kind of, well, not kind of, it was all a neighborhood. So it was odd to see cars that would be like tearing through the corners. So a lot of times you'd see us sitting in that little pocket where the T of the street was at, because hardly anyone came by. And if they did, they had to come around this one corner or come from way down the street, and you could see them and just get up and move. And so we were hanging out there, and this car come tearing around the corner, tires squealing in the whole 9 yards. And we started to bolt up and, get out of the way as quickly as we could. And Teresa stumbled or tripped or something. Next thing you know, I'm at the curb turning around to see what was going on. And she's like airborne, and the car's tearing down the corner. And I spun around to go back, and scoop her up and, hold her. And just like, it's almost like the movie. It's not quite as crazy with blood everywhere, but the whole, oh my gosh, the breathing is all kind of rattly and things are going on, and their eyes are kind of there, and passed away while we were waiting for emergency services to show up.
So someone hit her with a car.
Someone hit her with the car as they were tearing through the neighborhood. They came around the corner, and as she was getting up, like I said, she either stumbled or didn't get out of the way fast enough. There was like 3 or 4 of us there at the time, jetting out of the street, and just did pow.
Did they stop?
No, they kept going. And I honestly don't know if they ever caught the person, because this is a moment. This was one of those times I didn't go back to that location for a long time after, Teresa passed away. And I went there and, called a couple of times. And then I just kind of, I can't. It's one of those things like you're looking at that spot going, I can't do this, right? I still relived the moment, you could almost say, for quite a while. And so I stayed away from there probably till I got back from the service.
It was that, you think, one of those kind of deciding factors that took you there to the service, or, what was your motivation there?
That event certainly led into me making some pretty stupid decisions going forward as I was trying to deal with that death and hide the pain. You're a man, you can't show pain, right? You just kind of, okay, I'm good. I got through this. I cried. I went to the funeral. I'm good. I can do this. And then, start hanging out with the wrong people and making the wrong decisions, and like, okay, so either I'm going to go down this path right here, which is going to be dark and ugly and, a after school special, or I'm going to join the military and try and get my shit together. And so it was almost an easy choice. Like, my dad did it, my grandfather did it, and his father before him did it. So let's go ahead and go do this. And when I joined, you have to go through, I had it, at least back then, this would have been 1979, 1980. About the time you take testing, mental and psychological testing, and they come back and tell you, here's what you're good for in the military. And apparently I scored well, because they said, well, you scored well, so you can either pick your MOS, which is what job you want to do, or your first duty station. And I said, well, that's easy. I want to go back to Germany, which is where the last real joy, unmarred joy, was with my family. Would have been the last duty station my dad had before he retired. He goes, oh, well, in that case, you get to pick your job and your duty station, because back then no one wanted to go overseas. Everyone wanted to go to San Diego or Florida or, all the pretty places. And here I am saying, hey, send me overseas. And they're like, cool, go ahead and do that. And so I went from 17, and I went in with a deferred program. And then February the following year, I shipped off to South Carolina to go do boot camp and do my AIT. and then went overseas for 3 years and had quite a good time. But again, that was we'll call that responsibly running away, right? Because that's what I was doing. I wasn't standing there and facing, I call it facing my demons. Because I've learned in the course of my life that anytime I've gone through something traumatic, a death, for instance, and if I didn't take the time to look back and acknowledge it and learn from it, whatever it is I need to learn, that it would happen again, or or it would pop up at the most odd times. I know for me, when my grandfather passed away, I held down the pain of losing my grandfather for the longest time. And then one afternoon, I'm sitting there watching a movie with my father, and all of a sudden he was in the German military during World War II, and then defected to come to the United States after they ran some tests on him. And so we were watching, I forget what movie it was, but it was one of those German World War II movies, and it hit me. I started bawling like a baby. My dad's looking at me like, "What the hell's going on? Are you okay?" And oh, Grandpa, I don't know what, I couldn't even articulate it. Everything was coming out so hard and so fast. And that kind of helped me understand, like, shit, if I don't deal with this shit as it happens, that I'm going to have to deal with it times 5, times 10 later on. So it was kind of one of those learned experiences, but you got to go through it to understand it. Otherwise, you're going to go through it eventually. I honestly believe that God, Allah, whoever you believe in, Mother Nature, the universe, has a lesson you need to learn. And if you don't learn it when they put it in front of you, they're just going to put it in front of you again. Yeah. And I had an interview with a guy just the other night, and he said it very well. He said, well, what's going to happen is the first time God's just going to tap you on the cheek, maybe on the shoulder. And if you don't pay attention, well, the next time he might, kind of maybe just knock you in the head or just smack you upside the back of the head. And then if you don't pay attention, well, maybe he's going to trip you and make you fall in the mud and the muck and the guck and everything, and make you stand up and clean yourself off. And you're going to look and say, "God, why are you doing this?" He said, "Well, because you're not paying attention." So I started paying attention.
And so I was going to ask. Oh, Sid, is it you next? I'm sorry.
No. Okay.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if losing your girlfriend, because it sounds like you were about to turn 18 or 18 age. Did that cause difficulties going through the services? Like, what was the
it didn't cause difficulty with the services. What it did cause difficulty was my relationships. I turned into a complete manhole, right? I had girlfriends everywhere, and I refused to commit to any one of them, right? Because I had just gone through this traumatic, I was really in love, and bam, in a second, they were gone, and I refused to deal with it. So all the other ladies that, I was attracted to and thought I was cute or whatever it was, I was charming, I could make them laugh, oh yeah, sure, go hang out, do the thing, have fun, get intimate, whatever else. And then next thing you know, 2 days later, I'm over here. Oh yeah. Oh, I love you. No, I'm over here. Oh, I love you. And I was heinous. I was ugly. I was not the guy I would want my own daughter to date. And so that was something I know I went through. And, but again, it wasn't until later in life when I took a minute to look back and think, damn, you ugh, no. Right. And so that came from a learned experience with a brother from another mother, a gentleman I met right around the same time. And we remained friends until he passed away just a few years ago. And he was one of those guys who's like, you're being an asshole, right? He was one of those people I had in my life that was willing to stand in front of me toe to toe and say, "You're being a dick. You need to stop." And then you take those moments and go start analyze things. So yeah, that death of Teresa certainly caused that piece of things. And so it didn't affect things much further. It took probably about, when I got out of the service, I was willing to then, stay with a single woman at a time.
Absolutely. Understood. I had a question. I had a good one, but I lost it.
I hate when that happens.
Got it. I'm not sure what years you were in the service. Was this, during any times of war, or did being in the service itself?
I got out right at the time of Desert Shield. So that would have been what, 85, 86?
And did being in the service at all, did you run into anything that caused you any more trauma or stress, I should say?
I won't call it trauma or stress. What I can tell you is that while I was in the service, there was a young lady, like I said, I was over in Germany, a young lady who was of not an American, she was a German, that she was raped by a few GIs. And what I can tell you is that on a whole, at least while I was in the service and while my father was in the service, on the whole, GIs don't stand for that. And they'll take it upon themselves to hone their own form of justice. And these gentlemen were found. There was 3 of them involved, 2 that actually did the activity and the 1 that stayed in the vehicle. And they never went to jail. How about that? Okay. And it wasn't because they weren't caught. So maybe that was because of my past experience, combined with the gentleman that lived next door, and then losing a young lady that I loved. Hearing about this, that you take on those vigilante moments, not something you could be proud of, but certainly, wow, if it was my daughter, what would I do? You know what I'm saying?
Why did you think they didn't get in trouble?
Because I was the flags. Well, they did get in trouble. I know, because that was one of my jobs while I was in the service, was to manage the records. When you join the military, a file, it's called your 201 file, that starts on day 1 and follows you through your entire military career and tracks everything that happens to you. One of the roles I did in the service was, when you got in trouble, your file came to my desk. And so that you couldn't have any good things happen to you until your trouble was resolved via, some sort of military tribunal or some sort of punishment. You went to prison, or you got what's called an Article 15, whatever resolution is to your trouble. I know they didn't get in trouble. And what I mean by that is, they didn't feel retribution from a justice standpoint because they were never found. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I know that there are military gentlemen out there that have no qualms going out there and being vigilante in their justice of what happened to this young lady.
Okay.
And we can hop back into the story you were going into originally.
Okay.
That's what you said. You had gotten out the service, started your business, ran into methamphetamines.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a little detail about.
Oh my goodness, this was.
But I was going. That's what next.
Yeah, I'm going to call this the selfish part of my life, the selfish chapter, because it was all about fun and partying and having a good time and having money in the pocket and the cars and the boom boxes. And I had this will probably make you laugh. You may not know the vehicle, but if you look it up, this will make you laugh. I had a 63 Chevy 2 Nova station wagon. Not a cool car at all. and it was painted a bright yellow. I mean, bees would bounce off this car during the summertime. It was such a bright yellow. And the whole back of this vehicle was nothing but speakers and a custom box that was built back there. It was the early day of the big speaker rage happening in cars and all the amplifiers. I used to joke with my friends that if I ever ran out of gas, I could just bump down the road to the gas station. But it was, it was a crazy time. This would have been late 80s. I always tell folks, if they've ever seen the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, it's that same time frame and it's the same area, right? That Southern California area was all blowing up. It was everywhere. You couldn't spit without hitting someone that could get access to methamphetamines or cocaine at the time. And I was one of those guys, right? I used to hustle on the small bar pool circuit, all the little bars that would have, pool tables, go in there and shoot some pool, go around all the different places, make a few dollars. I didn't do it to make a few dollars playing pool anyway. I did it for, being all around the folks that, needed what it was I had available to them. And then I even stepped right from that and had other folks doing it for me. And that's where things got to the point where they kicked open the door to my condo, because you start playing in that game and you get the wrong person, on the team, and they rat you out. And 5-0 comes knocking at the door, and they knock really hard.
So, and you probably said it. What were some of the effects getting attached to a narcotic?
It was, the facts are, it was fun at first, right? The first time you try some sort of narcotic or any kind of drug, right? Be it marijuana or cocaine or methamphetamines or heroin. I've never tried heroin. I can't say of course, but I never went down that path. Methamphetamine, speed was as far as I went. It's always fun at first. Wow, this is cool. Do the thing and have a good. For me, when I first started, it was like, wow, I'm getting all this programming done. This is amazing. The problem is you start needing more and more to, feed the monster, so to speak. And that comes with a price. You got to spend more, and then you've got to sell to spend. And, it's this vicious cycle. And your body starts doing stupid things. I saw a picture of myself at probably about the middle of that time frame, and I was like a stick man. I was like Skeletor, and I was sitting down with my daughter on my knees. She was probably about a month old at the time, and my head looked too big for my neck and my shoulders because my body was atrophying because I wasn't eating well. Heck, most of the time I wasn't eating at all. And when I did eat, it was stupid stuff, go across the street to, 7-Eleven and get a burrito and some candy bars and then go right back at it again. So it was just a hideous time. I'm actually thankful that the police banged on my door. And I'm even more thankful that I wasn't there when it happened. I actually showed up the day after, and it's very much like you see in the movies. You open the door and things are thrown everywhere. Furniture is upside down, Rice Krispies and, instant potatoes are poured out as they're looking for whatever they're looking for. And in my case, they didn't find it. A little too smart. Apparently not smart enough, obviously. But what did transpire next is while I showed up on Sunday morning to my condo, and that's what I found was the tape and the thing. And holy shit, what's going on here? And as I'm starting to straighten up, there's the knock on the door, and there's two detectives there. Hi, from the PD. Are you Tracy Brinkmann? Yes, I am. Let me pause for a second. The Thursday before this Sunday, I went out with a friend to the shooting range, and we were shooting his guns. I didn't have any. They actually didn't carry back then. And was having such a good time that I asked him, hey, can you mind if I hold on to a couple of these? And because I'm going to come back to the range tomorrow and fire a few more rounds. Sure, no problem. We were good buddies. Okay, cool. So I put them in my briefcase. and put them in the trunk of my car and forgot about them. And I went on my 3-day party binge, traveling the pool circuit there. And then Sunday morning, I'm back at the house. Now we're caught back up, right? Are you Tracy Brinkmann? Yes, I am. Can we see your ID? Sure, it's over here in my briefcase. 1 second, let me get it for you. Okay, you with me? So I go to open the briefcase, not thinking about the Thursday. And I open it up and you're gun, right? And I get tackled down in handcuffs and whole 9 yards. And trust me, if I was in their shoes, I'd have done the same thing. Safety first. I'm with you on that. No problem there. And they take me downtown, and first off, they had me sitting in the cell probably, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. Who knows how long it actually was? I can't remember the timing, but I know I was there for quite a while. And they finally pulled me into an interview room, and they asked all the right questions. And what I mean is they knew all the right names. They knew they were all right places, quite a few of the right times. And I'm like, nah, I don't know that. No, maybe I met them shooting pool, but I mean, I don't know them personally. And in a couple of the cases, I did, right? So, after about, I don't know, half a day, maybe 4 or 5 hours of chatting back and forth, they finally let me go. And if you ever noticed, they're willing to give you the ride downtown, but they'll never give you the ride home. I have to figure that out. Maybe we call our congressman or something. Anyway, I'm walking back home, and I can hear my dad's voice in my head, family first, family first. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a new baby. She was probably about, 6 months old at this time. And it hit me that I was being selfish and that I was about ready to fuck up someone else's life with my selfishness. So when I got back to the condo, I picked up the phone and said, Mom, Dad, we got to talk. And they're like, sure, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, not on the phone. And thank God I had the amazing parents that I told you I have, and that brother from another mother, because my folks let me move into their garage, and they gave my daughter, my old bedroom, and I, cleaned my act up and got my shit together and started a better life. And what's funny, here's the traumatic piece of that. One, I had to pull myself completely away from everybody. I couldn't go and be hanging. Oh, hey, John, how you doing? Hey, you want to go shoot some pool? I couldn't do that because I knew I'd probably get sucked back in. I mean, I completely cut it all off and I was probably 20, 30 miles away to my mom and dad's house and just cut it all off. However, I could have restarted my business, gone and gotten a programming job because I had the chops, but I felt like a failure. I had taken that hit to, I don't know, my emotion, my psyche. And so what I did instead is I had to rebuild my confidence, and I started working odd jobs. I mean, I worked in the Montgomery Ward's warehouse for a while. I worked down at the docks for a while, just doing something that made me feel good to do it. To feel good about myself, feel good to provide for my daughter and give something back and not be so fucking selfish. And then about 2 years into that, I applied for a role at the Coca-Cola company and got hired. And that started my corporate career.
That's awesome. So what kind of, outside of just kind of pouring yourself into work or keeping yourself busy, it sounds as if, you kind of got through it, yourself in your own techniques and mechanisms. Mm-hmm. What else were you doing, to avoid using again or, going back to those crowds?
Well, it was like you mentioned it right there, is avoiding those crowds. And then I started hanging out more with Robbie, my brother from another mother. And we were doing everything, all the things that I loved to do when I wasn't spun out of my mind. I loved installing car stereos. I loved painting cars. I loved working on motors. I wasn't quite the gearhead that he was. He was always the motor guy. I was always the body work and the sound guy. And so he was rebuilding his 68 Mustang. So I spent a lot of time over at his house, working on his motor. Actually, he bought a brand new motor. And so we just built it from the ground up and dropped it in there. I spent many an hour working on that. So it was really, throw myself into work. He had 2 kids that were just about the same age as mine. So obviously the kids could get together and hang out and, goof around in the cribs and in the living room for a while we hung out. It was really applying myself somewhere else. So I wasn't missing the fun that I was having. I just put my fun into something else. I mean, there was obviously plenty of things I could do that I enjoyed. So let's go do them, right? And not be high while we're doing them.
So moving back, because I seen a piece that, and if you're comfortable talking about it, you lost a child at 18 months.
I did.
Was this not your first child, or was this?
This would have been my second, right? And we're actually going chronological because that's the next big thing that happened in my world was the loss of my daughter. And I was probably, it would have been about 2, almost 3 years into my career at Coca-Cola. And that had moved me to Atlanta to continue the uprise. And so the mother of Krista was here in not here, I'm in Wisconsin right now, was still in Southern California. And I had just made the move out there, and I was, trying to find a place for us to live. And I was just about to come back to Southern California for a month to pack everything up because we had just found the place and we're going to drive everything out there. So it was supposed to be like that Saturday that I was going to be flying back to California. And it was like a Wednesday or a Thursday. I got a call from my ex-mother-in-law that they had taken her into emergency, and they lost the baby's heartbeat. So they were doing emergency cesarean to get there as fast as I could. And luckily, I had some amazing friends in the Coca-Cola community that in the time I got that call and walked into the office to tell my boss and walked back to my office, his admin had got me a ticket to get from Atlanta back to LA, and he was waiting for me with his car to drive me there. And my former boss from California, who also was out in Atlanta now, was going to go to his house where I was staying to grab me some clothes, and they were going to mail them out there to me. So it was like a whirlwind. Next thing I know, we're barreling down the 75 freeway heading towards Atlanta Airport so I can get to California to find out what's going on. And so we get out there, and Child Services had taken control of Chris at the time, because it turns out the mother at the time was on speed. And we filling a circle coming here anyway. And so when they tested her blood, it came back positive. So party time there. But when she was born with a distended abdomen, and it took, over the course of the next 3 months, like 6 operations to get her stable. Everything from trying to what happened was when she was in the womb, her small intestine didn't grow to full size. It's usually like, I want to believe it's like 300 centimeters. When she was born, hers was like 30. So she didn't have enough intestinal surface to sustain life by eating food. So one of the operations was to put this TPN line, and TPN stands for total parental nutrition. So it's a bag of nutrients they feed straight into the bloodstream to keep you alive. Good, got it. And in the process, what happens is, the body, being the amazing thing that it is, it says, oh, well, you're getting all this pre-filtered awesome food right away. You don't need me, the kidney, over here to filter things. So I'm going to start deteriorating. So she ended up needing a small bowel and liver transplant. And once we finally got her, got through the whole, defects thing and got custody back and brought her out to Atlanta, I was out there on the public speaking circuit talking to everybody about the benefits of being an organ donor. That was my way of coping with the pain at that point. As I was doing something like Sid had said earlier, I was applying my work. I liked public speaking. I needed to get people aware of my daughter's needs. So that's what I did. I started doing that, and I was talking everywhere. And as we went through this exercise, we had one false alarm. When you get on the UNO's donor list, they give you, when you get high enough, they give you, like back then it was a beeper. I felt like a dope man all over again. They give you the beeper and the instructions, and you have the go bag ready so that when that beeper goes off, you get to the hospital, because they happen really fast. And we had one false alarm, and I say it's a false alarm, and it went off, and I got the bag, and we're driving down there, and we get down to the hospital, and the young man who was going to be the organ donor was beat so badly the organs were unusable. That's the story I got. So heartbreak, double heartbreak, right? Because here's the thing: for my daughter to live, someone else had to die. You want to talk about, just, oh my God, how do I moralize that inside of me? And then you're thinking about, oh my God, this child was beat so bad, their organs couldn't even be used. And more enragement is coming up. And after we had this false alarm, the doctors told us the best place for Krista to be would be in Pittsburgh, because that's where the best surgeons are for this. So they go up there, mom and the baby. And I was going up there every weekend. And so at that point, I was the single father here in Atlanta with my oldest daughter, who was about 5 at this point. And, and then doing the back and forth. And at one point, I flew up there to Pittsburgh, and any parent will understand what I'm about to say. When you look at your kids, you feel, whether it's a feeling or this physical knowing, when something's wrong, whether it's they're lying to you or they're sick or just, it's this parental thing, right? You can't explain it to a non-parent. I walked into her room and I was like, there's something wrong here. What's going on? I couldn't make her laugh. I'd always been able to make her laugh. She was really a joyful child. And so I called the doctor making the rounds, and I asked him, and I went about this a little differently. I didn't go, hey, what's wrong with her? I said, let me ask you a question. If the organs were available right now, do you think she would survive the operation right now? And I got a lot of him and a hawing. I did a little doctor speak this and a politics kind of thing, that. And I literally grabbed a hold of the white coat, dragged him across the hallway, and there was a janitor closet. We went inside there. I said, look, it's just you and me now. You can say I didn't say anything or whatever. Just tell me. And I finally got the answer. No, I don't think so. Well, okay, not the answer I wanted, obviously, but now I know. I got a baseline. So my next question was, do you think her health will get to the point where she could survive the operation? A little more him and Han, but it was shorter this time. But again, the answer was no. And she was saying, really, what's keeping her going right now are those machines that she's on. It's like, shit. So here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Do I be selfish like I had been in the past? Or do I let her go? Do I keep her here for myself, or do I let her go? Tough decision. It's not a decision I would wish on my worst enemy. And I've had a couple of them, not on them even. So made the decision to disconnect the machines. We wrapped her up in the blanket that grandma had stitched for her. And I sat down in the rocking chair, and this is literally a statement of fact. I rocked her to sleep one last time. And sorry, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a curse that there are moments like right now when I'm telling the story, I can feel that pain all over again. But it's also a blessing, because I got to say thank you for all the lessons she taught me in the short 18 months that she was here. And there was a lot of them. She was amazing. She wanted to touch and feel and explore everything, but she was like E.T., right? She would see something she hadn't seen before, and she'd put her little finger out, and she would touch it. And once she touched it, it was like any other baby. It's everywhere. It's in her mouth. She's playing with it, whatever. But she always explored the world with these amazing new eyes. She was always looking at things. Oh, okay. So I was thanking her for that. And I was promising her to be the father that would make her proud. So for me, that was the blessing of it, right? I got to experience the worst and at the same time say thank you and and make the promises that I wanted to make. So many of us, we lose someone we love and we can't be there, or we've said something ugly and that was the last thing we know that they heard from us. I got to erase that whole board and tell her everything. So if there's someone out there you love, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening right now, text them, pick them up, call them on the phone, go see them, and make sure you tell them you love them, because you never know. It might be the time that you got to get disconnected, however that might be in your world.
Demetria, do you want to go into your last question?
Yeah. So, we're at time.
Okay.
Thank you for your powerful testimony and sharing it, and hopefully this can help someone else. I just want to say, from personal life experiences, what can you tell the audience to help them through maybe a drug addiction or coping as a parent, losing a child, or just life period? What advice can you give them from your personal experience?
It's probably twofold. One is be you, right? That's my mantra. I think so many people get caught up in the vices of life by not being themselves. I got caught up in the vice of life because I was trying to be that super successful businessman without putting in the work. I thought speed was going to be that shortcut, right? So be you, because when you're being your true self, and that means you're going to have to know what that means. You're going to have to take a minute to reflect inside and say, okay, here's what I value. Here's what I think is important. Here are the things I won't stand for ever, kind of things, right? Know what those are so that you can be you and never give up on being you. And when you do that, there's a confidence that, you're able to hold your head up high and your shoulders firm and just kind of stand on your ground, even when you know it might send you back a couple steps. Okay, so be you. And then the other thing, and I briefly mentioned this early, is look back on the shit that you've gone through and try and glean the lesson. Some people might call it look for the silver lining in the cloud. That's fine. That's what it means for you. Look back at the caca in your life when the shit just kind of hit the fan and you were at your lowest. What was the lesson you needed to learn, and that maybe you need to know now so that you don't experience it again or cause someone else to experience it? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Those are wise words. And thank you so much again for, sharing your ups and downs and your wins as well. So since we did come short on time, we can kind of intermingle this last part here. So we do like to give our viewers our guests a chance to participate in Shameless Plug. You see all of your information scrolling across the bottom here. Since we did not get into, where everything has brought you today into your business and how you are helping others with online businesses and being entrepreneurs. Tell the viewers a little bit about what you do, how you can help them, how they can contact you, utilize your services. You have the floor.
Well, I kind of plugged the shameless plug into the introduction. But I'm happy to do it again. I focus on the parents because I was a parent, right? Because I know the pains that we all go through trying to balance the family life and start a side hustle, maybe escape that 9 to 5. And I try to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt their entire lives. And actually, I just dropped an episode today. So they wanted to check it out. They can go to the website that's scrolling across the bottom, darkhorseschooling.com, where I rated 13 of the top business models that are out there to share with them. Here are the really good ones for my busy parents. And here are the ones that, while they're still good, maybe it's not time to do them yet. So what I would say is check out that episode of the show. And if you want to learn more, all the socials are up there and how you can contact me. And as you see going across down there, I do a newsletter where it's all about the goodness of digital marketing strategies for my busy parents that actually work today, not last year.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, we want to thank you for sharing your testimony with us on Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, where we're going to continue to share life experiences. You had so much more. We weren't able to touch certain areas. So if we look back and have some more space, I would love to invite you back again.
Anytime you want to come, I'm happy to bust my chops.
Okay. See it. We're going to keep sharing life experiences. Ain't that right?
That's right.
Okay. So if anyone is going through losing someone, losing a child, an addiction, lost and elevating, we hope that this podcast will be a beacon to help you through your journey. Thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we're going to continue to share life experiences. And Tracy, if you can hold 1 second as we close out. Oh, and like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube, Unfiltered Unspoken podcast. You'll see the green logo at the top. You'll see me and Sid at the top too. So come like, share, and subscribe. Peace.